Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Girl Means Business podcast. Today is the first of our interview episodes, and it's a really, really good one, guys. It's all about social media. So I interviewed Sandee Booth, who is a social media manager, and we talked about all the things. We talked about Facebook and Instagram and Pinterest and how to manage your social media, what content to be posting, how often to post it, just so much good information in this one interview. We also talked about life as a working mom, how to balance working from home with little ones. In fact, you'll hear as we start the interview that we talk about our kids. Her son was in the room as we were interviewing. At the very end, he crawled into her lap. It was so cute. So we talk a lot about just the balance between being a work-at-home mom, following this passion, this dream that we have, but at the same time, being able to get everything done in a day that you need to get done in order for your house and your business to run smoothly. Okay, so let's jump right in, and here is my interview with Sandee Booth.
I'm going to turn down my 1-year-old's puppy dog pals.
Oh. You don't want that in the background?
Yeah, I don't know how well that would help.
It's that mom life business world. I love it.
Yeah, anytime you have kids at home.
Mm-hmm. Okay, my daughter loves puppy dog pals too, so I understand.
Yeah, it's his favorite thing. Like I tried to work from a coffee shop this morning and he was not having it at all. Yeah.
All right. So Sandee Booth, welcome to the Girl Means Business podcast. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Yes, I'm excited to be here.
So I want to start off, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, how you got into what it is that you do, and just your story.
Okay. So, hey y'all, I'm Sandee. I am a social media manager / virtual assistant. I am from Savannah, Georgia originally, and my college sweetheart decided to join the Coast Guard, which means I get to move all over the country every 2 to 3 years. And I realized after I had my third child that I was going stir crazy being at home and not having a career, because I'd been working before I had children. I worked retail at a quilt boutique.
Oh, wow.
And I managed their social media. Yeah. It was a family quilt store. I was the 3rd generation, but that doesn't travel well. And so I needed something that I could have. And so I started working on people's social media accounts. A friend got me into it. She's a food blogger. And she's like, you would love this. You need to try this out. And so I was like, okay, because why not? And I took a chance on it and I absolutely love it. It's pretty much full-time now, and it's majority social media accounts, and it's fantastic. I love it.
So what type of social media accounts do you manage? You mentioned the food blogger. What other ones do you work with?
I have worked with fitness, fashion, beauty. Pretty much it runs the gamut. I work solely with women, which I love because there's so many women entrepreneurs out there, and they are amazing. And I love it.
I love that that's become a trend now. Like, I think that it's incredible. Like, I like what you said about how you were going stir crazy. I think with like our parent generation, probably it was just starting to kind of phase out the whole, like, mom should be home. Mm-hmm. And I had that same vision. I was like, I just don't know that I could just be a stay-at-home mom. Like, there are moms out there who do it, and God bless them, because I'm sure that they have a million things they're taking care of every day. But I needed something for me that was mine.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. Like, I know people who are stay-at-home moms and they thrive. And I did when my 2 oldest, who are only 18 months apart, were toddlers, because I was just too tired to do anything else. But once they got into school, I was like, oh my gosh, I have all of this energy and I have a brain that is just going to waste. Yeah. I was like, I need to spend it on social media and I need to do it to help other people. But I normally work with Instagram and Facebook the most.
Okay.
And some people don't consider Pinterest social media. They consider it a search engine, but I also work on that. And I love those. Those are my 3 favorite. They're tops. Like,
those are the ones I actually wanted to talk about today, because those are my 3 favorites as well. So I wanted to basically kind of look at those 3. And I do feel like that Pinterest is its own little world. I think it's not the same as Instagram and Facebook. There's different, I think, rules to it. So I want to get into that as well. So let's start. What do you, like, if you had to pick one platform Well, okay, so let me back up. So if you were a new business owner, so if someone comes to you and says, okay, I have no clue how to do social media, what would you say is like the first place you should start?
I usually recommend starting with Instagram because it's easier to deal with. It's a better intro platform than Facebook.
Okay.
Because you don't have to post as many times. And there's a lot less background work involved with Instagram than there is with Facebook.
Gotcha. Okay.
Because Facebook, you need to post more. You need to be a little bit more active. But with Instagram, you're posting content to your feed once or twice a day and engaging, and then you can add to your stories. But with Facebook, you're posting on there considerably more often.
Yeah.
Typically.
So with Instagram, I just had a question that completely left my brain.
Okay.
I know. Okay. So with Instagram, it's very visual. You have to have, images you post. So as a photographer, that's not a problem. But if you have someone coming to you that's a business owner who isn't a photographer, their content maybe isn't visual, what do you recommend for them posting? Because I know I've had a lot of people say, well, I just don't know what to post.
No, it is hard for a lot of people because they're like, I have no idea what to do. And it overwhelms them, which is, I understand. I normally recommend, like, when you start out, you can either post yourself so people can see the person behind the brand, which is great because it humanizes your account.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that definitely can drive traffic. A lot of quotes are popular now. People love quotes. Like, if you can make some graphics on, some digital, totally just based on that, like Canva.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm obsessed with Canva.
I love Canva. I am not a graphic designer and I don't claim to be, but Canva has made my life so much easier.
It's the best thing. And like, I don't know who created it, but whoever created it, I just need to go give a giant hug to, because they've made my life so much easier.
It was a girl in Australia, and I think she was in college. She was really young. She was in her early 20s when she created it. Because I read about her because I wanted to be like, oh, you're amazing. You're my hero.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I recommend either, doing some quotes like that just to begin with. And then you can take pictures, like say your real estate. You can post pictures of the houses you're working on or staging you've done. You don't have to do a whole room. You can just show a corner.
Okay.
Or if you're a coffee shop, post pictures of your coffee or coffee beans, just even a small aspect of what you do, because there's always something you can take a picture of. And it doesn't have to be something amazing, because then you can use presets to change it and make it cohesive for the feed.
Because that was going to be my next question, was if you don't feel like you have the skills to take these beautiful photos, because Instagram can be very daunting when you pull it up and you see these gorgeous images and it looks like everyone has a professional photographer following them around 24/7.
Yeah.
So that can be intimidating. So for someone who, feels like, well, all I have is my iPhone and maybe this little point and shoot camera, how can I make that look good? Do you give tips? Like if you're working with somebody, do you give them tips as far as like, here's how to get the best images? Here's the presets you can use, things like that?
I do. I have a handful of different presets I use personally on my own account. And then I've recommended like different backgrounds and things, because you don't want to have something that's too busy, because then it can be a little overwhelming. Even though, bright pictures typically catch the eye better. Right. You don't necessarily want to have like 30 bright standout pictures on your feed back to back, just because if someone's scrolling through, they're like, wow, that's kind of overwhelming. But yeah, I have recommended different presets for people. And obviously like different people are going to like different ones, because there's some that are really popular right now that are very orange and people love that. I normally go for a lighter, airier feel. That's what I normally gravitate towards. But there are also people who like really dark images, and it works well for their niche. Like the people who follow them also enjoy that. Right. So that's fun because it works for their audience. Yeah,
I was going to say, and then again, as a photographer, I see a lot of other photographers' feeds. And I talk about this a little bit in an episode I did about comparison and how it can be really easy when you're starting out to look at all these different styles and get caught up in the idea of, well, maybe I like the light and airy, but I love the dark and moody. And where do I go? And then you just become this jumbled mess of no real cohesiveness.
Yes, no. And people they struggle with that, but it's figuring out what fits your personality and your brand. And once you figure that out, it's a lot easier to go forward. But you have to sit down and you need to write out essentially, this is my audience. This is my message. You know, this is what appeals to them and this is what fits my personality, and then go from there. Because I mean, what is popular isn't popular for everyone. It really just depends on, you know, who you're marketing to.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I love that. So then let's talk about how often they should post. So let's say they've created these great photos, they've used the presets, they have everything ready to go. How often should they be posting to Instagram?
I normally say for your feed, not for stories, you only post 1 or 2 times a day. There are some people who can get away with posting 3 times because that's what works for their audience, but I usually don't recommend posting more than twice, just because sometimes it can get, it's overwhelming for you to try to keep up with that, but it can also be overwhelming. Sometimes Instagram doesn't show your photos immediately. So someone could pop on and they're scrolling through and then they see like 6 of your photos back to back. And they're like, well, now I'm going to unfollow you because I've seen too much. But with stories, you can post as much as you want. Just don't expect the same amount of engagement on stories. It's typically a smaller percentage on stories than it is on your actual feed content.
Okay. So let me ask you about stories. So I've just recently, in the past year, probably have really gotten into stories. I think it's a fun way to show your personality and like behind the scenes, those kinds of things. But a lot of business owners that I talk to, they're very hesitant to do stories because they feel like it's not polished. It's not like they're like, well, I don't have my makeup on. I don't have my hair fixed. I don't have the right background. I don't have this. And so they get caught up in that. So do you what are your recommendations as far as just jumping into stories? Do you have some tips?
Yes. Okay. So with stories, it doesn't need to be polished. And I've heard that from a lot of people. They're like, but it's not as pretty. But that's one of the aspects of stories that people love so much because it's not supposed to be the pretty polished side. It's like you getting up in the morning and pouring your coffee and you're talking to them over your coffee, or you're showing them, this is what the pretty aspect you saw on Instagram. And then you turn the camera around, you're like, this is what it actually looks like.
Yes.
You're showing them your humanity, and that typically makes them like you more because they're seeing that you're just like them.
I agree. And I think that's a big part of it. And that's one of the reasons why I love social media. And I think that it's so good for businesses is because with so many people starting businesses, you're really buying into the person behind the business just as much as you are the product or service they offer. So the more that they get to know you and they feel connected to you, that like, know, and trust factor, I think it's so key. And those stories are a really great way to do that. So I love that. Do you ever, I know with the posting today, and we're going to get into like the managing and scheduling, things like that. I know that there are some programs that will even schedule your stories. Do you recommend that, or do you think it needs to be more organic? Or a mix of both?
It depends more on what you're doing. Like if you're a clothing line and you don't really have the time, like you could just post, you could schedule it in advance. I like posting organically with stories just so it's more in real time. But I mean, if you don't have the time, you can use the scheduler. That boils down to preference. I just personally like a real time, more authentic story since that's kind of what they're there for.
And what do you think works better? So I know I've seen, and I've tried a bunch of different things as far as just, recording on the camera, talking to the camera. I've recorded, things that I do behind my scenes in the business, or I've done some where I actually go into Canva and I'll create, like little templates and things like that to post that are more the polished photo along with a caption or things like that. Is there anything you have found that is more, that works better, that gets more engagement, or is it just a matter of mixing all of the above?
It's pretty much mixing all of the above, because what works for photographers won't necessarily work for someone who's in the beauty industry, just because you have such different aspects to your job. But it just comes down to being authentic and staying true to like who you are and your voice. So as long as you're not like, oh, this is how I am, but it's not really how you are.
Yeah.
Like just keeping that same consistency throughout. Like if you're a goofy person and your stories stay consistently goofy, people love that.
Yeah, I agree. I think I love stories. Once I really got into using them and understanding what they were, I really love using them. And I think it's like, I look forward to seeing people's stories more than I do their posts sometimes, because I know the stories are the real thing going on.
Yeah, they're a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
Like the stories show you their personality, and the pictures on their feed are just their posed professional things, which is what gets their business. But the stories they always make me smile. I love seeing them too.
So another feature of Instagram that I know a lot of people ask about are hashtags. Do you have any advice or tips for incorporating hashtags, or how to find the right ones, how to use them?
So with hashtags, it's definitely really important to use them. I feel like if you don't use them, you're wasting, like it's an untapped audience essentially, because there's millions of people out there and they look for hashtags. So you have to spend a little bit of time finding which ones work for you. And then you have to make sure the ones that you're using are actually applicable to what you're posting. Because sometimes you'll find a hashtag and you're like, oh, this makes sense. And then you click on it and you're like, oh, nope, cannot use those. Happened a few times. So as long as, yes, make sure you use them. You can use up to 30. I recommend using a mix of smaller ones and bigger ones, just because the bigger ones are more popular, obviously, but you don't want to use just big ones, like the ones that have been used over 1 million times, because your picture, maybe it'll be seen for half a second, but so many people are using them, it's oversaturated.
Yeah.
And so you'll post it. That's great. A handful of people might come back to you that way, but for the most part, they won't. And with the smaller size hashtags under 200,000, you'll get the most return on that hashtag use, because it'll be up there for longer. More people are likely to see it. And it's honestly it's better time spent in that like 5 seconds it took you to type out the hashtag. Yeah. That's a better 5-second time spent than it would have been to put out the one that had 2 million uses.
Yeah. So when I first started using Instagram, I had a different set of hashtags for each kind of genre of photography that I did. And one for like, if I was posting about something me personally, and I would just keep them on my notes, like on my phone, to copy and paste. But I've heard that it's better to mix it up, like to use the same hashtags every time. So do you have a tip for like, because I know a lot of times people are posting on the go. So it's hard to sit there and figure out, okay, well, what hashtag should I use? Type them in, go check. So how do you manage that?
So with mine, I always have a handful in mind. Like I always know that I'm going to use, not necessarily the exact same ones, but they're very similar, just to change them out. And I use a handful of the same ones on a regular basis. I don't want to say daily. And then I use some different ones. So it kind of switches up. And then what's nice is with some schedulers, like one of the ones I use is Buffer. Like I'll start typing hashtag and it'll finish it for me. So it knows like which ones I'm going to use essentially. So it doesn't take nearly as long for me to put them in, which is wonderful.
And do you recommend putting them in with the caption, or like I usually put mine in the first comment just so it gets kind of buried in there? Does it matter?
Yeah. I feel like that's personal preference, because I have heard some people swear by having it in the first comment because they're like, well, it goes in a comment, which boosts, essentially like the conversation on your post, which Instagram does like seeing more comments. So it helps the algorithm. But I haven't noticed a difference on my own personal accounts or on the accounts that I work with where placement is, as long as they're not literally like right on top of the caption. Right. And that's just because it looks messy.
Well, and that's the main reason I started putting it in the comments, is I wanted the caption to be its own sort of standalone thing. Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about Facebook. And I want to start with, because I know we mentioned the Instagram stories. I know Facebook has their own version of that as well. Is it as popular? Because I haven't used the Facebook. Instagram's my number one go-to. So I haven't used the Facebook stories as much.
They're really not as popular, honestly. I don't see a lot of businesses using them on Facebook. They typically keep those to Instagram.
Yeah.
Like a lot of people just really don't check stories on Facebook. I feel like it's because they're so used to it being on Instagram, that they don't even look for it on Facebook.
Yeah. So what are the major differences for someone who's thinking, okay, well, Instagram versus Facebook, what are the main differences between the two that you would say are important to know about?
I feel like, okay, so with Instagram, you're posting to your account, your feed. not your stories, but the feed, 1 or 2 times a day. And then you're needing to engage like immediately, like 15 to 30 minutes, however much time you can fit in. You're engaging with your audience. You're going to the hashtags, you're commenting on those, you're commenting back to your followers, anything to drive traffic to your page.
Okay.
And with Facebook, it's a little bit harder because people's profiles are private. So the setup is totally different. So that makes it harder, one, to engage. And then Facebook really likes videos. They love videos.
Okay.
And so, you're posting different content essentially on the platforms. And then you're also posting more because Facebook likes to hide stuff. And it's so much harder to get your stuff seen on Facebook. Like you can have an Instagram page and you can grow followers relatively quickly, but to grow followers on Facebook is a lot harder, I feel like, just because you can't go search people and engage. Like you're posting and you're sharing and you're posting about it, in groups, but it's harder to get that engagement. And you're also posting more. Like I know people who post upwards of 10 times a day.
Wow. Yeah. See, and I've always Facebook has always been an afterthought for me. I have a business page. I think I've been at the same number of followers on a business page or roughly around the same for a couple of years. Whereas my Instagram has grown like crazy, but yeah, I see exactly what you're saying because it just kind of hangs out there. And I tend to only post to Facebook, honestly, through Instagram, which may not be the best thing to do. But
no, I do the same, but they say not to.
And I know it doesn't get nearly the engagement as it does over on Instagram. But again, it's kind of one of things where I just, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I'm not putting my focus on Facebook, but at least I'm putting something there.
Yes.
To stay somewhat relevant. Yeah.
Personally, I'm the same way. For clients, I'm different because I actually put care into consideration into their accounts as opposed to mine. They don't recommend posting directly from Instagram to Facebook, but I am too lazy for myself to come up with original content for Facebook. But for clients, I do recommend having different content. Hashtags don't do as well on Facebook. That's one of those things. And like I said, Facebook really likes videos. And if you say you're uploading a link to Facebook, they like it if you don't have like the photo that's on, like when you upload a link and it shows you like an image, they if you have like an actual photo, not from that link, like you upload another one because then it removes that preview, the link preview.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the photo is a lot bigger. It looks cleaner, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's easier. It's more eye-catching because when you're scrolling through, as opposed to just seeing a link and like a small preview, you're seeing the link and this beautiful, big, bright photo.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah. Because there's been times I've posted links and I just post a link preview and it looks awful. Like, I'm like, that's not even the photo I would want to show up in the link preview. Or the text isn't what I want it to really say. And so, a lot of times I've removed it anyway, but that's good to know. And I know the video thing, you mentioned that. So give some examples if you're working with a client, because I know a lot of people listening to this might be thinking, well, I don't like video, because they think of video as being like the video, like the live videos or where your face has to be on the screen. So give some examples of things you would tell clients to do on Facebook for videos.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be you. First off, it doesn't have to be your face. It can be, say you've got your camera set up and it's recording your hands. Like it's recording you doing something. Say you're cooking, like if you're into calligraphy, you're writing out something. It's showing you doing it, but it's not showing your face. It's not showing your body. It's literally just showing your hands doing that. Yeah. And if you post that, I mean, you can post like a 30-second video or a 60-second video if you want. It doesn't have to be long, but it's going to get more engagement from people. It's going to get reshared more often than, say, just a picture. And it's just because Facebook likes videos more. And it's just how it is.
I think about, like, in fact, just the other day, I got sucked into a couple of videos on Facebook, and the ones I love, and I think, and Facebook has figured out that I like these a lot, but they're the ones where people are like decorating cookies. I don't know what it is about those, but it's like, it's therapy for me. It's so relaxing. I'm like, what are they going to make this time?
Yes. No, I have a friend who's a baker and I'm always like, you can totally just send me pictures.
Yeah.
Like you can just take video recordings of you decorating because it looks amazing.
Yeah. There's ones of them that people like decorating cakes and things like that. And I'm just mesmerized by them. I'm like a kid in front of a computer screen. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they going to do next?
Yes, I have done the same thing. And it's such a time waste because you're just sitting there and you're like, I could be working, but this is a really pretty cake.
I know. Well, then my problem is I get the idea that I'm like, well, maybe I could decorate cookies like that. And I'm like, no, that would be awful.
No, I tried. I shouldn't have. I leave it to the professionals.
Yeah.
I just buy the already decorated pretty ones because mine are not pretty.
No. But I like to think that like they make it look so easy. But those are the videos that I see that I think, okay, this is a good example because you never see that person's face. You just see the product and what they're doing. Yeah. So I love that.
Those do really well. And it's great, especially if you don't like people looking at you, not just because you're like, oh, people looking at me, but it's like, you're camera shy. And I totally understand that. People, they're either worried about being in front of the camera or they're just worried about judgment and appearance. And that's fine. We've all been insecure and been there. So even just showing like your product is really great.
Awesome. Okay. So any other tips for Facebook before we move into Pinterest?
Just staying regular on your content, posting, making sure it looks good, like clean up links. Don't post a link that's got, that you've shared, you copied and pasted from like Facebook, because then it's going to have a really long code. You want the original link. Okay. So just make sure everything's the original link and you're posting regularly, quite often.
Awesome. Okay. So Pinterest, this is where I feel like I'm starting to get back into Pinterest. I let it go for a while because it felt a little overwhelming to me, but I personally love browsing Pinterest. So let's talk about the difference between Pinterest and then like Instagram and Facebook.
Okay. So I love Pinterest. I'm obsessed with it. I've been on Pinterest personally, not using it for my business since it first came out. I can't tell you how many hours I've spent on there, but it is fantastic. So what I love most about using Pinterest is you can use a third-party scheduler, which I like to personally use Tailwind.
I just got into Tailwind and it's so amazing.
Isn't it the best?
It's so cool.
Such a time saver. I love that. I mean, you can sit down for 2 hours and you schedule your pins for the month and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
So it's because it drops pins at the right time for it to be seen. And then you can, you do the loops. So then your personal pins get seen all the time, essentially. It's great. So with Pinterest, it's a search engine and it can be overwhelming because you're like, oh my gosh, what do I put? Well, you want to have the right size images. You want to have working links and you want your boards to be cleaned up. You don't want to have, if you're a food blogger, you don't want to have style tips unless it's food styling tips.
Okay.
If you're in the healthy living industry, it needs to be all relevant to your industry, your niche. So if you're in beauty, then you can have beauty, you can have makeup, lifestyle, like anything like that fits into that realm. And if you're in fitness, healthy recipes, healthy living, fitness. So you keep your boards cleaned up. Like you can have boards that don't, pertain to what you do, but just make those secret. So it's just you seeing them. And you want to make sure it's set up as a business account so you can see the analytics.
So now your boards, those are the ones that you're pinning other people's stuff to as well as your own, correct?
Yes.
Do you recommend having a board that's just your own things that you're pinning, or do you mix them in with the other boards you have?
So what I like to do is have one board that is just yours, but then you're also going to repin your pins to other boards. So they're circulating through the boards.
Gotcha.
You just can't repin it all at the same time because then Pinterest will mark it as spam.
Okay.
But I do recommend having your own specific board. So then if someone's, they're going through and they're searching, they'll come follow you and then they see your board that has all of your pins. It makes it easier for them to find just your content.
Okay. So along that same line, so let's say you have a board on your Pinterest account that's just dedicated to the things that you are personally pinning for your business. And I know you mentioned with Tailwind, like with Tailwind, I have it set up so that some of my like evergreen content, it gets recirculated throughout the year, however, on a cycle.
Yeah.
So my question is then, if it's repinning the same thing to that board, do I need to go in and clean out? Because it's going to end up having the same image multiple times, correct?
Yeah, that's if it gets pinned too many times. Honestly, I normally don't have things get pinned to the original board. I have them get pinned to the other boards. But then, you change the pins that you have going through.
Okay.
And the assumption is that you're sharing so much other content that it's not like, say someone goes to your board and they're going to see, 10 of the same pen back to back. They're going to see a pen of yours, and then they're going to see like 15 or 20 other pens, and then they're going to see your pen again.
Okay.
So they would have to really stock your boards to see the pens as often. But it just keeps it so it stays fresh. So if someone hasn't been on Pinterest before, or they haven't been on in a while, they can pop on and they'll still see your things shared like it's brand new.
Okay. And do you recommend doing the same content with a different image? So like, let's say, for example, I have a blog post that is about wedding planning, and I can have it linked to the same place, but I have maybe 4 or 5 different graphics that can go along with that. Do you recommend doing that, or should you stick with just one?
I like having a couple of different images, just because one image might not be appealing to everybody. It might only appeal to a small percentage, but you might have a photo on there that is super popular right now. And so that one would do better. So you have different images to appeal to different people.
Okay. Wonderful.
It's just like having, different views of the same thing.
Yeah.
But it still works.
I feel like I could talk about this all day. So let's move on to creating the content. So I know that one of the questions I have had asked before is, how do you come up with so much content when you're first starting out? So let's say that you mentioned like the coffee shop. Let's say you've opened a coffee shop and you're getting ready to start like an Instagram or a Facebook or whatever. And you're thinking, okay, well, I've only been open for a month. How do I have enough content? So what do you recommend when it comes to creating that content?
Okay. So I usually say in the beginning, especially if you don't have a lot, you source it from other businesses or websites, whatnot, that are in a similar field. So, if you're a coffee shop and say you're in a small town coffee shop, which is, there's a lot of those now.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be friendly with your other coffee shops. Say you could share some of their stuff onto your page, because it'll still bring traffic to you and it looks friendly, which is great. Right. You want to see the friendly coffee shop. And then once you get more traffic and more content for yourself, then you're sharing just your stuff, with occasionally throwing in somebody else's stuff. Or you could share recipes for like how to make this really good coffee, or this is how we make our yummy coffee, things like that. Because for the most part, people aren't going to make it. They're going to say they're going to make it, but they're still going to come to you and be like, hey, can you make that drink for me? It sounded really good.
Exactly. Just like with the cookies I said earlier.
Yes. They're like, I feel inspired, but I'm not.
But no.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about stock photos? I know we kind of touched on the photo issue earlier, but so if you're, again, just starting out like the coffee shop and you don't feel like you have a ton of professional images, or you don't have enough, or maybe your shop hasn't even opened yet, you're just getting ready to have your opening. Do you recommend going towards like stock photography, or do you steer away from that?
I'm fine with stock photography. I think it's good to have something, because honestly, there are going to be times, even if you're well established and you might not have been, like, you might have put the content on the back burner because you were busy with other things. You're like, oh no, I need something. In comes stock photography. It's a lifesaver. I mean, there are photographers who do that just for their business.
Yeah.
They're wonderful for that, because I have used it for myself.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And I like it. I just think it's great, because the images are going to be clean and look good and professional, especially if you get them from, decent places.
Right.
I just always recommend kind of staying away from the ones that have been overdone and overshared.
Mm-hmm.
So we've all seen those stock images that everyone has shared, and you don't want to just fall in line with that. You want to use something a little different. So I recommend searching a little bit more to find images that aren't as used.
Okay.
But overall, I'm a fan.
Yeah, I know. I am too. And even as a photographer, there's times where I think like, well, I wish I had a photo of this specific thing for this, what I'm wanting to say. And I could go out and create it myself, but that takes time and effort. And it's just easier if I can go find one I can use that's already done.
Yes. Or you can do a Google search and you find it in like 2 minutes and you just save so much time.
Exactly. Okay. So speaking of saving time, let's talk about how you manage scheduling your content. So we kind of touched on this at the beginning too about, with Tailwind, things like that. So, and Buffer, do you have any other programs or systems you use?
I love Tailwind and Buffer. Those are my 2 top favorites. A lot of people talk about Later. They really like that. I've downloaded it. I haven't actually really looked into it too much just because I love Buffer and Tailwind that much.
Yeah. I've used Later. That's what actually I have a social media manager and we use Later. And I like it because visually I like the way it's laid out, but I also use Buffer because I have groups that I post into, and Buffer lets me schedule into those groups, which is really nice.
No, I love Buffer because it lets you post into a lot of different platforms that a lot of other schedulers don't let you. And there's a free version and then there's the paid version, but the paid version's, up to 8 accounts. I think it's like $15. So it's not bad.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
It's very budget friendly.
Yeah.
But
well, awesome.
Yeah.
What would be like your number one, like starting off advice you would give to somebody?
I would tell them to figure out exactly who they're marketing to, who is their audience. Because once you know who your audience is, you can figure out, hashtags on Instagram. You can figure out what's going to appeal to them. And then you can schedule your content in a way that appeals to them. You can schedule things and you can write your copy and make sure it's going to sell, but it also is relatable. So I always just say, figure out who your target audience is and then go from there. Because that makes it so much easier.
It does. In fact, it's funny you say that because the second episode, episode 2 for this podcast is all about finding your ideal client, because that was one of the biggest game changers in my business. Was once I finally figured out who I was talking to when I was posting to social media, and it made everything else so much clearer in my business. I think that's a big starting point.
No, it's a really, so many people will start and then they're like, well, I don't know who I want to market to. I don't know who my audience is. And I'm like, well, you need to figure that out, because then you will feel so much more energetic towards your business. Like it'll have such a clear photo, of exactly who you're working with. Yeah.
I was in there's a girl I know, she does these little Boss Babe happy hours here locally in Dallas. And I went to one and she had a blogger that was speaking, and the blogger actually does marketing for different companies in the area. And she was marketing with one company who I think they're a fashion line or something in the fashion industry. And they actually created like a virtual person that was their ideal client. They gave her a name. They crafted out her personality. They created a wardrobe for her. The whole 9 yards. And I was like, what a cool idea to have. And she said at one point she was scheduling out some content for their social media, and she wanted to cuss in the post. But then she messaged the owner and she was like, okay, do you think that Zoe, that was what they named her, do you think Zoe cusses? And she's like, oh yeah, she totally does.
I love that. That's such a good idea though, because then you have an exact idea of who you're talking to.
Yeah. And I think people get worried that eliminates somebody from their business, but it really doesn't. I think that's the fear they have, but it's not. You're just giving a voice to who it is you're trying to draw in, and you're going to draw in people on the outsides of that as well.
Yeah. It's like you start smaller and then you can expand, as opposed to starting big and getting overwhelmed and speaking to everybody and no one's listening. You start with one person and then you build from there.
Exactly. So awesome. So, okay. So tell us where everybody can find you.
Okay. So I am on Instagram at Sandee L Booth. It's SANDEEL Booth. I will say that I got that spelling from a book when I was 14.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then my website is sandeebooth.com, SANDEE booth.com. And then on Facebook, it's Sandee L Booth as well, just to keep it, cohesive and easy.
I love it. Well, I'll post those in the show notes too. So people that want to go find you can go follow you. And so on your Instagram, do you share, is it mostly about you or is it mostly about your business?
It's more about me talking about being a work from home mom and trying to manage everything with 3 kids in all of their insane activities. And then my obsession with clothing.
I love it. Awesome.
Yeah. It's more of a background peak.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's again, like we talked about earlier, that's the fun part of following people on social media, is getting to know them and feel like you are friends with them, even though you live across the country from each other.
Yeah, no, you can have a virtual friendship, and that is amazing, because then you can still message somebody and be like, oh my gosh, my day is awful. Please talk to me.
You know, we message back and forth. And I think that some people have this love-hate relationship with social media because it can be a time warp, and it can cause some, comparison issues and things like that. But I think the core of it is being able to make connections with people that you normally wouldn't get to make connections with. And to me, that's the beautiful part of it.
That is what I tell everyone. Social media, like, it does have its downside, but at the heart of it, it's about connections and connecting people and bringing people together. It makes the world a lot smaller place.
I love that. I think that's great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I love chatting with you. I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Wow, that was a really great interview. I love chatting with Sandee. She was so sweet, and she shared so much amazing information. I hope you are walking away today with tons of tips on how you can get started with social media. Whether you already are using social media for your business, or you are jumping into the world of business social media with Instagram and Pinterest and Facebook and all the things, I hope that you have some really amazing tips now that you can put into action. Sandee has been extra kind, and she has given me some information to put into a PDF, a free download that you can get with all of her best tips for social media. So tips for Instagram and Facebook and Pinterest that you can download and refer back to anytime you need to just give your social media feeds a little extra boost. You can go grab your download at girlmeansbusiness.com/episode 3. Okay, y'all ready for today's listener lounge question? Today's question comes from Amanda. Let's see what she has to say.
What's your best piece of advice for growing your business and marketing?
Oh boy. Okay, my best marketing advice. So I like to think of marketing as a friendship with your clients. So if you think about your relationships with your friends, let's say you have a friend that you have a standing lunch date with every Wednesday afternoon. And every Wednesday when you and your friend get together for lunch, she talks nonstop about how amazing her life is and how great she is and how wonderful her hair looks and how great her outfit is and just how perfect her life is. Pretty soon you're going to get tired of going to lunch with that friend, and you're going to find a reason not to go. So the marketing you do in your business is the same thing as having that lunch date every week with your friend. You are sharing part of your business with your audience, with your clients. So you want to make sure that you're keeping them engaged. They want to keep coming back to you. And the way you do that is by giving them something of value. So think back to that lunch with your friend. If your friend came to lunch and every once in a while she talked about her great kids and her vacations she's been on and the latest hairstyle she's tried or whatever, but then she's also listening to what you have to say, offering you valuable advice, sharing tips with you that she's experienced in her life. If she's giving you something, you're more likely to stay and continue those lunches with her. So with your audience, you want to be giving back to them. This is where sharing blog posts, posting content on social media that is something of value. So here's an example for you. Let's say that you own an online boutique. So most of your clients obviously are shopping for clothes. They're into fashion. They want to look nice. Don't just post about your amazing finds. Don't just post about all the things that you're selling that you want them to buy. Share with them tips on how to style what's already in their closet. Share tips on how to go from a daytime outfit to an evening out with your husband or your significant other without changing much about what you're wearing. Maybe talk about how accessories can change an outfit. Things that your clients are interested in. What's going to happen is they're going to start looking to you as an expert in the field, as a resource. So instead of just coming to you when they're ready to buy something, they're going to come to you when they want tips, when they want advice. And then the next time they're in the market to purchase something that you're offering, that you're selling, they're going to think of you first. So make sure that you are giving way more than you are asking in return. I like to follow the 80-20 rule. 80% of the time I'm giving valuable content to my clients. 20% of the time I'm asking for something in return. All right, Amanda, I hope that helps. I'm going to have a ton more episodes all around the idea of giving valuable content and information to your clients. So just be ready, but hopefully that'll get you started for now. Thank y'all again so much for tuning in. Thank you to Sandee Booth for being an amazing interview. I hope y'all enjoyed what she had to say, and I hope to see you back here again next week. All right, ladies, y'all have a great week. Keep chasing those dreams. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to click the subscribe button so you never miss when a new episode goes live. Then head over to iTunes and leave a quick review to let other people know just how much you loved it. Thanks, ladies. See you next week.